War is the continuation of politics by other means. Karl von Clausewitz.
After bringing Prussia under control, Bismarck set his sights on the rest of Germany. Although, to achieve his goal of a Prussian-led German nation, he would have to deal with Austria first. By 1863, Emperor Franz Joseph I was ruling over a vast multi-ethnic empire stretching from the Alps all the way to Russia, one of the most powerful nations in all of Europe. Ever since the German Confederation had been restored in 1849, Prussia and Austria had been struggling for dominance. Now that Prussia was distracted by the conflict over the military reform, the Austrian government decided that the time was right to introduce a reform to the German Confederation that would make sure that Austria would keep its dominant position. The proposal included a governing body of German princes under leadership of the Austrian Emperor and a parliament with 300 members. On August 16, 1863, on Austrian invitation, the rulers of the German states held a conference in Frankfurt, the seat of the German Confederation. King William, who had been convinced by Bismarck to not attend, despite having been personally invited by Franz Joseph, was not present. After the opening speech by the Emperor, Frederick Francis II, the Grand Duke of Mecklenburg-Schwerin, suggested sending a delegation to the King of Prussia in the hopes that a formal invitation would change his mind. A delegation led by John, King of Saxony, was sent to the Badense city of Baden-Baden, where William was currently residing. At first it seemed like he would change his mind, but once again, in a furious debate that caused the king to have a nervous breakdown, Bismarck convinced him to not go to Frankfurt. On September 1st, with no clear statement from Prussia, the attendees saw themselves forced to reject the Austrian proposal. Humiliated, the Austrian government plotted their revenge until a change in circumstances forced them to join forces with Prussia once again. There was trouble brewing on the northern border. The border between Denmark and the German states had been a point of contention for almost 1,000 years, and, in the wake of the 1848 revolutions, old conflicts had flared up again. The sister duchies of Schleswig and Holstein were in a peculiar position. In the 1460 Treaty of Ribe, the King of Denmark, Christian I, had declared that Schleswig and Holstein should remain forever undivided, a sentiment that still held weight 400 years later. However, by 1848, things were not as simple. Both Schleswig and Holstein were ruled by Frederick VII, King of Denmark. However, the majority German Holstein was part of the German Confederation, while the ethnically mixed Schleswig was not. When the wave of revolutions swept across Europe, the German population of Schleswig and Holstein rose up against their Danish rulers. The rebels received military support, first by the German Confederation, then by the provisional government of the short-lived German Empire, though Prussia had to withdraw their support in 1850 due to international pressure from Russia and Britain. The conflict was eventually settled with the London Protocol of 1852, in which the King of Denmark was confirmed as the Duke of the Twin Duchies. However, it was also decided that both duchies should remain independent, with neither having greater constitutional affinity to Denmark than the other. 11 years later, in 1863, King Frederick VII died. With no heir, the Danish crown went to his cousin, who ascended to the throne as Christian IX. Soon, he found himself confronted with his nationalist government. Under their pressure, he signed the new Danish constitution, which stated that Schleswig was an integral part of Denmark. The Schleswig Germans utterly rejected the constitution and instead declared Duke Frederick of Augustenburg to be their ruler. Christian knew that this would not bode well for his kingdom, and while following along with his government, he declared that the government, and the government alone, would be responsible for the consequences.
He would rather lose half his crown in a war than all of it in a revolution. Theodore Fontane.
This violation of the London Protocol was cause enough for the German Confederation to sanction military action against Denmark, although there was substantial resistance from within. Bismarck, however, had an ulterior motive. He wanted to claim both Schleswig and Holstein for Prussia. On Prussian initiative, after occupying the duchies of Holstein and Lauenburg in December of 1863, Prussian and Austrian troops invaded Denmark on the 1st of February 1864. On April 18th, the Danes were decisively beaten in the Battle of Dibble, and by mid-July, federal troops were occupying large swathes of the Danish peninsula, forcing the Danes to negotiate a ceasefire. In July, Prussia and Austria made preliminary peace with Denmark under the condition that Schleswig and Holstein would be completely separated from the Danish kingdom. In 1865, both Austria and Prussia signed the Gastein Convention, placing Schleswig under Prussian and Holstein under Austrian administration. For the next 50 years, this would be the last time that Prussia and Austria would fight together.